Already. Okay. Oh, work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. First item is the discussion of the formal agenda. And you can see that we have an amended agenda, both for the work session and for the regular session. Do we have any questions on the additions? Any questions?
No questions.
All right. Ready to move on to the topics. We have the agenda review, finance quarterly report, fiscal year 26-27 budget committee appointments, Suffolk County tobacco retail license ordinance, and then shelter funding formula, which was an addition to the agenda. So let's start. Do we want to look at the agenda review all the way through almost the end of the year here, December 17th. So you'll see that we have a couple of cancellations. November 19th is canceled, and then Thanksgiving week, November 26th is canceled. Any questions on the rolling agenda here?
Chair Krulow, members of the board, you're probably not surprised, but as we get closer to the holidays, the number of agenda items is not what we normally see. So we'll kind of watch that and see, and if there's an opportunity to talk to your board about canceling a work session as we move forward, then we will have the two regular meetings no matter what, because we're only having one in each of those months, November and December. So.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. All right, let's move on to the finance quarterly report. Fiscal year 25-26 on page 3. Andrew Sullivan, our finance director, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Krulow, Vice Chair May, Commissioner Krulow, can you see everybody? I just want to provide your board with just a brief update into the first quarter of the fiscal year. I do have a few slides. I didn't have those. It should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need music.
There it is. Again, I would say I appreciate that we have these quarterly updates and reports. This is very helpful, and I know that there are no surprises when we get to budget season. So this is
That's the idea. Yeah, transparent throughout the year.
Absolutely.
Budget, everybody cover.
much appreciated.
Absolutely. No, happy to do it. Thanks, Teresa. I mean, you can probably go straight to the next slide. So we are through the first quarter of the fiscal year, so we want to provide your board just kind of a brief overview of the key budget policies that we've basically been subscribing to, throughout the budget process and into this fiscal year. We'll kind of take a look at the first quarter balances, and that'll inform kind of what the fiscal year forecast kind of looks like.
Okay.
So looking at some of our selected strategic expenditure approaches going into the current year, and some of these topics we talked about throughout the budget cycle, during the budget message, was kind of reiterating some of them being to maintain current staffing levels, review vacancies on a case-by-case basis. I think another thing to mention there is we're doing this in a manner that it's not compromising the quality of the services that we're providing. We're identifying opportunities to reduce expenses and materials and services countywide, and that's something that's really being done on a daily basis as decisions are being made throughout all the departments. Some of the organizational realignment based on efficiency and effectiveness and productivity goals. One of the examples we have is for the Health and Human Services Division.
Yeah.
And lastly, to restrict the general fund availability to backfill losses of state shared or federal revenues. there's a lot of news going on right now between federal freezes, what states going through, but you know, we look at those very, very closely as far as what we might need to backfill. And thankfully, we haven't experienced that, because we really know how it's going to look.
And not to interrupt, Andrew's mojo, and sorry. But just as a little context, you know, 30 out of the 36 counties right now are in dire financial situations. We're fortunate to be one of the 6 that's positioned a little bit better, but as we've talked, it is not an easy road in front of us financially. And so, these are the things that we're doing now, on top of looking at revenues, you know, obviously looking at the expenditures all the time. I just want to reinforce something that Andrew said, which is we're managing this every day. It's not, we adopt the budget and then we just kind of, you know, blindly go through the fiscal year. We're making adjustments, modifying approaches, shuffling the deck as we need to, because our goal is to meet the end of year fund balance goal, which was part of the budget process. And so it's a very dynamic environment. We're fortunate that we have the runway that your board has, you know, provided for us. But that's going to be necessary as we move forward. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Teresa. So kind of shifting gears, looking at what we're doing as far as the revenue side goes, there's only so many places we can go to, but it's just to kind of reiterate, you know, we're facilitating the AV growth by supporting the construction, job growth through via the enterprise zone strategic investment program applications, such as the One Mill. Just recently, we increased the countywide transit lodging tax from 1 cent to 3 cents. It's going to be effective the first of the year. And ultimately, what that means in dollars is about 1/4's worth of that revenue to recognize it in the current year. And that's really what's kind of getting us over the hump of the deficit of the current year. For the fee schedule, it's something that we already did back in June, July, to have a full cost recovery approach when we established and adopted the fee schedule for the current year. And we continue to support legislation for the state to actively fund locally delivered state programs, which applies to a variety of programs. So the graph in front of you, you're kind of getting an idea. So we're 1/4 of the year, so we're 25% into the year. It's a decent indicator to apply towards appropriations and expenses. Obviously, we're veering off that at this juncture. That usually would prompt us to look into, you know, why not. So for the areas, as you can see, overall, most all areas are underneath that 25% mark. And for the areas that are over, there's an explanation. I just kind of do that really quickly here. So, right, the ones that really kind of stand up towards the bottom there for the Fair and Expo, it's just the nature of their programming, the annual fair, and it's things that are front loaded up and front. So that's why it's a little bit higher. The mental health grants experienced a fund balance transfer because we're moving those funds out to a dedicated fund so we can track and isolate those funds a little bit better. General roads equipment replacement, they purchased a 2025 Freightliner grapple truck that was budgeted for $250,000. So that's a little bit higher. And for capital projects, we just have bigger projects happening earlier in the year between the courthouse single point entry, the 800 exchange, and the courthouse elevators, Westport playgrounds. All this just kind of add up.
And these are the non-general.
Thank you. Yeah, these are all non-direct. Does anybody have any questions on the non-direct?
What, sorry,
Sure.
what is the video lottery fund?
So the video lottery fund, and
So the state allocates video lottery funds to the county for economic development purposes. And so we use some of those funds to fund Cedar. And then we transfer a significant portion to a community development to work on through their land use.
And it's more reason why it's a little bit higher than the transfer.
So that's funneling through basically.
Yeah, so we paid Cedar their quarterly amount, and then also, what will happen is the quarterly transfer happens basically July 1. And so then in some instances too, we had a carry forward balance that we knew, and so then we budgeted a larger amount, and so it gets transferred.
This is county manager. But even in those areas that they're a little bit over, you will see those start to taper as they use. So switching over to the general fund departments, again, kind of apply the same methodology, and above the 25% mark, kind of taking a little closer look at. The general fund in total is at 24%. All the areas beneath that, you're all tracking very, very well. A handful of areas are, yes, they're above that threshold. The one that really stands out is the dues and special assessments. That's because we pay our annual property liability insurance all up front. So we can just start to see that kind of taper off as the year goes by. Similar explanations to the transfers to other funds. All the transfers happen up front. County manager's office and information systems, they're just particularly for information systems, they're paying for some annual maintenance fees, things like the MS Office 360 and all those things. So again, we start to see those kind of catch up a little bit throughout the year. Any questions on the general fund areas? Yeah.
So we're basically on target.
Yeah, 24%.
So for the general fund, switching gears out to the revenue side, while we still, yes, we're using this 25% methodology, but it doesn't really, it's not very practical in this instance. Obviously, if some of these areas were, well beneath this, we would be looking into it, but the nature and the seasonality of how the revenue comes into the county is really what has the most impact on these percentages. So for example, I mean, for the rural law enforcement, it's zero because that doesn't happen until October. So we'll start to see that coming. For property taxes, I mean, 85% of it comes through in October, November. So you'll see that skyrocket by the second quarter. Some of the areas that could apply the 25% to would be something like the indirect cost revenue, which is that we control. And I would even maybe point out to the timber revenue, which can be a little deceiving. It's at 32%, so you're doing great. We're already above 25. We should be posting the rest of the year. It's just so volatile. You just don't know quarter to quarter, fair up or down. Good sign that we're already a little bit ahead, but we really don't know until that fourth quarter.
There's no relationship from one quarter to the next. It's all dependent on many factors.
Any questions on the revenue side? So there's a variety of mechanisms that we put into place for county management and leadership to either forewarn or take proactive measures if we feel that, right? Departments or areas are either veering from their budget or revenues aren't the way that we think. And so this is one of the bigger tools that we use is our forecasting report. Right now, given where we are in the first quarter, market trends, environment, some crystal balls peppered in there too. We think we're on track to be right where we were at during the budget cycle. We're forecasting that will be above zero. How much we're not quite sure, but it's like those encouraging things there.
So that just means that our current year revenues are right now tracking to be slightly above our current year expenditures. So that was our goal going into the year, was to not be in a deficit spending situation. So
yeah. So a lot of the logic that's applied in the forecast is really based on the historical trend, what the current information that we know and really mean daily, weekly, monthly, any information that we get, we plug in, see kind of how that looks. And again, it gives us some time and ability to react to. But right now, so far in the first quarter, things are tracking well. I don't think we had any questions on the forecast or any other questions? I think it's the last slide.
All right, well, thank you, Andrew. Do we have any questions? Thank you.
Just a comment, in regards to the timber revenues, right now, we have, purchasers hanging on to sales. So there may be a gap in funding for a little while before those sales are. And then the other thought process is, I've been having conversations with, some of the private landowners, but also, with AOC, Brandon at AOC, just regarding our November meeting. And it sounds like the Board of Forestry could potentially adopt a higher, board fee outlook for the next year, but that will solidly put us into a departure, which just means that we are going to go up. And then we're going to fall off a cliff financially with timber sales. And so, just so that we know in our runway conversation that the cliff is coming, we're gonna run out of trees to cut. So. And I'll know more after the November meeting,
Well, I think
what
there's,
that looks like for us.
check with the members of the board, and there's still questions about where the HCP is. And
It's not approved yet.
yeah, and so,
Yeah, like at the national level, it's not approved yet. They did send back hundreds of questions to the Department of Forestry. And so the department is going through and listing the hundreds of questions, but I reiterate, this was supposed to be finished in 2023. And now we're in 2025, and they're talking about adopting a forest management plan. And my worry and my concern is that they're gonna try to push through rulemaking without an HCP. And the rulemaking is attached to the HCP being approved. And so if the HCP is not approved, then the floor falls out of the plan. And then goes 8 years of work from the department. And I don't know, I'm just pushing the department to maintain surveys. Because if they maintain surveying, then they can still create sales. But if they stop surveying before the HCP is approved, they can't sell sales. You have to have either a permit in hand that says that you don't need to survey anymore and you're okay, or you need surveys. And so right now I'm just shoving the department to continue surveying.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Yeah, a lot of assumptions are being made, and
Mhm.
so unfortunately, when you have this level of uncertainty, makes it very hard to plan. But I do appreciate that we've been conservative in our approach, and certainly looking forward, consolidation in public health and children's services into the Human Services Department, I think was a very wise move. A way that we can kind of stay ahead of some of the expenses. But
and the chair, there'll be other things that will become visible in the next 6 months.
yeah,
Of other opportunities for us, and some of them we'll be working with our partners. I'm just thinking about Consolidated 911 and some other things that, depending on how we deal with the governance issues and the formation issues, there could be some additional relief for certain jurisdictions, so in fact, all the jurisdictions. So we're working through a lot of different scenarios, really managing for the long term, because we understand that status quo is not going to be sustainable, so.
well, we appreciate that approach. Certainly, it's necessary in this uncertain time.
So just a question, is there a nexus for us if the federal shutdown continues past the end of October? Is there potential for the county to bring, say, the food banks to the table? And because there's gonna be a drop in service for SNAP benefits for,
Well, there's a lot of discussions happening in the community right now, and even the county is gonna partner on doing a food drive
Yeah.
and some of those other activities, so there's a lot of
schools are doing food
yeah,
drives.
there's a lot of conversations in the community, and so those are ongoing, because after, once we get into November, it's gonna put pressures on all those. you know,
Yeah.
Kind of basic needs systems, so.
Any other comments, questions?
Just scary.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks, Ed.
again, appreciate the ongoing, management of this, day-to-day management of our budget. Certainly appreciate the quarterly reports and look forward to seeing you, February, January.
On the heels of
Next year.
that, see a lot of each other.
I do wanna say that, through COVID, we saw when the state's unemployment system kind of broke down, community came together. And that's just how Clatsop County works. And so I'm just hopeful that if and when that a similar thing.
Yes. And it will. I don't have no doubt. Okay, thank you, Andrew. Appreciate the update. We'll move on to the fiscal year 26-27 budget committee appointments, page 13.
Chair Wheeler, members of the board. So here we are, we're already talking about next year, for budget 26-27.
Perfect segue.
Yeah, so we do have two vacancies, in districts 3 and 5. We did receive a handful of applicants, so we're coming to you board with those applications to get your feedback, and we were slated to come back November 12th to actually.
So, we do have Mr. Ogers here this evening. I think, yeah, and Bob, nice to see you. Is also here, Bob's an applicant from District 5, and obviously David, District 3. I believe. And so, so two of the candidates are here tonight. We didn't plan on doing interviews.
No.
No.
But we do appreciate the name practice. And, again, David has been a member on the budget committee. We really value his participation and his collaboration with the county and so many other organizations throughout the community.
And Bob has
And
been,
then Bob, yeah, you, not too long ago, but about a year ago, but, again, appreciate, what you've been doing down, in South County, and appreciate you applying. Both very, worthy candidates. It would be great addition to the budget committee. Any other thoughts, questions? Questions? I mean, we got, yep.
I like having a candidate pool.
I know.
Yeah.
We don't have to relaunch
So how do we proceed on this? So
we'll be bringing those back on the 12th, Chair.
okay, on the 12th, right?
Okay.
Great, thank you. Thank you for being here, Peter. Appreciate you coming. All right. Thank you, Andrew. We'll move on to the Clatsop County Tobacco Retail License Ordinance. Page 20. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Chair, fellow members of the board. So, I guess this conversation started probably a year ago when the county manager asked departments to look for services that we were participating in that had a duplicate state service that kind of alongside of it. So in 2020, Clatsop County passed the tobacco retail license ordinance. And shortly after that, in 2022, the state came out with their own retail license ordinance. And so what our thoughts are moving forward, and actually last spring, I reached out to the Oregon Health Authority to request about opting into the state's retail license, which essentially gives us the ability to do the inspection, but not necessarily handle the violations. The violation handled by the state, report the violation to the state, and then they handle it from there. At this point, our hope is that
we will bring an ordinance. The ordinance back with an amendment, which would essentially remove all of the conditions minus one, which would be about the sale of tobacco. Within 1,000 feet of the school. So that ordinance would come back to your board. Prior to when we would actually start opting in, which would be July 1, 2026. Our ordinance will stay in effect through the remainder of the fiscal year. Our invoices will be going out here shortly. We didn't want to send them out until we inform the board of this option. And those will be prorated for 6 months, knowing that the state's ordinance and their invoice will go out. They would be responsible to pay starting for their license, their state license starting July. The fiscal benefit is the state will pay us to do the inspection. Our current retail license is $350. If we do the inspections, they pay us $380. So we essentially get paid more to do the inspection, and there's less staff time involved in submitting the invoices. And also, if there is any kind of appeal, the current process is that goes through county council and the county manager's office. So we don't necessarily see that as a good use of resources.
No, I think this makes a lot of sense. I think anytime we can eliminate redundancies and streamline the process makes a lot of sense. It's a benefit to the county. It seems to be a benefit to the retailers as well. Have you ever had any feedback from any of the retailers about this?
I have.
Yeah.
And I think that the retailers' view is that they would prefer just being under the auspice of the state.
Yeah.
Because some of the retailers are working in various counties, so they're in more than one county. And we have Clatsop County being one of a handful that's not opting, that has not opted into the state program. The rules that they follow here are unique to Clatsop County. And so it's hard for them to stay on top of the Clatsop County rules when they're training their staff to work in multiple counties, whether it's Columbia County and Clatsop County or Tillamook County. And so they would prefer being licensed under the state. I think they're good with our staff doing the inspections, but I think they're also good with the enforcement side coming from the state. So I just think it is, we did it back in 2020 because there was nothing. 2022, there was something. It's just become clearer for us that now that that something exists, which is the state program, opting in still allows our staff to be involved to provide the inspection service, but without all the other responsibility and being friendlier to the retail side. So
I think coming off a discussion about the budget, looking for efficiency, which seems to be a good one.
I was just curious if there was gonna be a permit fee change, an increase to the retailers.
Yes.
it'll be a state fee, which they're all paying now.
Oh, okay.
If they're in, if they're working in various places. And so it'll be the state fee, which is higher than the county fee.
Okay.
And I do have that number. The current rate for the state is $953.
There, it's a big difference, but I think for them, just the efficiency of it, because we have a lot of rules that the state doesn't have. The one that's important to us is the 1,000 feet. And that gets addressed before there is an actual retail business cited. So that, happens early. And we don't have any now, and it's good to not have any as we move forward, so.
And retailers are aware it's changed for the most part. They've been kind of tracking this and know that we've been moving towards the state.
Yeah, I think. What's that?
I said I didn't want another food cart situation where the fee increased without.
Yeah, when we invoice, we will we're gonna send that prorated invoice. So they'll have at least a 6-month lead time before their invoice. comes from the state or is at least due.
Do they pay both fees now? Or is it just the cost of
Pay the
county?
county.
Just, they just pay the counties.
Okay, so it will be
It
a
will be
fee
a dramatic
increase for them.
It'll be a fee increase for those within Clatsop County, but for those that are in multiple counties,
They're already,
yeah. So,
I just communicate.
Yeah, there will be a letter that accompanies their invoice,
Okay.
letting them know of. Our
well,
choice.
and I'll say too, that if we were gonna continually do this, we'd have to increase
To pay
our
for the
fees,
staff.
because it doesn't cover the total cost of the program. You just get one appealed enforcement, which has happened, and then county council's involved, I'm involved. There's a lot of costs that don't get covered at that point. So we would have to look at those costs. And so the real nexus between our cost and what the state's charging is less than what the current fee structure is for the county. I mean, the difference is less.
Okay, any other questions?
Can we do this with more things?
We're looking at,
Let
it, believe me, this isn't the last thing. We'll be coming with you with some more stuff.
I want to make note, I appreciate the process that we've been going through for the last couple of years about looking at our permit fees and making sure we're paying for staff time and it is a long process, but I appreciate that it's happening.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
Thank you. The inspection, reimbursement on the inspection, how long does an inspection typically take for somebody to go out and do? Like, I'm just curious what that percent.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. There could be multiple inspections. There could be a complaint. And typically it's from another retailer. Not always, but sometimes it's another retailer that sees someone that's violating the rule and then they'll notify us. We do a compliance inspection. Ideally, we do a legal minor sales, which is where we hire someone to go in, a young adult. That's under the legal age to buy tobacco, and we do that inspection, which doesn't feel like an inspection, but it is, to see if they're complying. And then we also do our standard yearly inspections. So, one retailer, if there's complaints, there could be multiple inspections, and then that's where we start to get to a point where, we're not necessarily, that $380 is not necessarily paying for
Time.
our time. So,
But the state would still, even if you're doing the multiple inspections, they're gonna continue to pay for each inspection, or is it gonna?
I think if there's a compliance inspection, then there would be different, and I haven't dug into those numbers yet, but my thought is there should be an additional cost to, especially if there is a founded violation.
Right, and if there's a violation, like, is there a fine associated with it that's, however, occurring fees associated with the time we're putting into it? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, in our,
I don't want it to be a sinkhole where you just keep sending somebody out and then they keep getting away with just a slap on the wrist.
yeah, in our current ordinance, there is a fee structure which leads up to potential loss of license, and that's where it was getting kind of sticky.
Yes, I mean, right now, there's kind of a progressive. And this isn't our ordinance, which we would be.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be rescinding it, but we would be taking out the meat of it and just leaving the one element, which is the 1,000 square feet. But right now, it's kind of a progressive process where if you don't comply over time, you can lose your license, which means you cannot operate in the county. And that's what, obviously that is what they fear. So usually there's a certain level of responsiveness, but you get into a lot of nitty-gritty details because some of the requirements deal with packaging, marketing, and and they're selling a lot of product, as you can imagine. Which I've never been into one of these stores, but I've seen pictures. And so, so there's just a lot that goes into it, and so it takes time. I don't think it's like a restaurant inspection, but it is it does take time to go in there, talk to the owner, talk about what compliance looks like, identify where their violations are. It does take time.
You probably don't have their number on you, but how many retailers are there? in West?
60,
60.
yes.
Out of curiosity, are the violations that originate from another vendor, are they typically like validated? Or are
Yeah,
they?
usually,
or is it-
it's a true statement, and they're just upset, like, in our current ordinance, you can't offer. Couponing, or you can't advertise a sale. And. Another retailer will go to a store and see that someone's violating that rule, they'll report it, we go remind them, you can't do that, they take it down. Sometimes it's even just a handwritten. They're trying to get through product. And if they're not a retailer that has another location, sometimes the manufacturer sends it with prepackaged at a discount. And so that product has to move out of our county into another one of the locations where they sell it.
Which is part of the inefficiencies
And
for the retailers.
more reason to get
Yeah.
Keep it.
Okay, well, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Kelly.
You bet.
Appreciate it. All right, Assistant County Manager Monica Steele. Talk about the shelter funding from there.
Thank you, commissioners. So, we did finally get a contract, signed contract this week from the state OHCS. And so, as mentioned in your packet, the total amount for the 25-26 fiscal year is 1.8 million. And the county is able to retain 7% of that for our portion of the admin, role as a regional coordinator. So we will be keeping $127,857.17. And so from there, the remaining amount is $1,698,673.82. And so in prior years, we received this funding in a few different pots, and it was broken out where you had your Senate or your House Bill 5019 funds, which was for the creation of beds. And then you had your Senate Bill 5511, which was the maintenance of existing beds. And so for us, the creation of beds came from CCA and Lifeboat Services, and the existing beds were Helping Hands and the Harbor. And so when we now in the current fiscal year, the way that we're receiving the money is all in one pot of money. So when the county was trying to figure out how to distribute these funds and try and maintain the integrity of how OHCS had originally distributed them, we then said, okay, 75% of the funds is going to continue to go towards the created beds under 5019 and 25% towards the SB 5511. So from there, we then broke that out, and in your packets, you all should have received a formula spreadsheet. And so if you that leaves $1,272,113.99 to be split between CCA and Lifeboat Services, and then $426,559.84 between Helping Hands and Harbor. And so from there, we then recognize that there's. Sorry, did you?
No, I don't have it in the packet.
Those are
Oh,
the.
Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. So from there, we recognize that every organization has base costs, and those are things such as your utilities, your mortgages or rents, your maintenance costs, those sorts of things that everybody has to pay with. So of that 1.272, we then said, okay, we're going to, just using the majority of it, we're going to then split that in 50% amount. And so now that gives you $636,056.99. And from there, we then split that 50% between the two providers. The other 50%, we then said, okay, there is a per bed cost that each of these providers has, and every bed is not equal. And so we then looked at it from a perspective of what is the funding diversification? Because we know that there needs to be a diverse funding stream, because as we've talked about with our own budgets, it's essential because you don't know where the funds are going to be coming from. and it's going to be a strain. And we got that information from OHCS required all of the shelter providers to fill out a spreadsheet. And in that spreadsheet, they themselves entered in the different types of funding streams that they have. We also looked at 24-hour access.
Can I just?
Yeah.
Just want to reiterate that a little bit, is that the state money is not gonna be sufficient to do everything that needs to be done regarding homeless. The unfortunate part is that is the only funding that the county's passing through. It's just the state funding. It's gonna be really important for all these organizations to have a diversified funding stream, because no one funding stream is gonna be adequate. And that's just what the reality is of the situation that we're dealing with. And so if the goal is to maintain the beds, then we have to really look at what are the, where are those beds, and how do we maintain as many of those beds as we possibly can? Because our commitment is that we're gonna maintain. And so, and there's not enough money without other funding sources to maintain these beds. I mean, that's just what the reality is. And this money tranche is less than what we got last time. So we have we have to approach it with how do we maximize the beds? Because what's important to the county is that we have these beds, because they have shown to provide vital services to those most in need in our community. And so, and we're fortunate to have, I think, 100.
Yeah, 100 beds,
100
just
beds.
counting the ones that were created.
Yeah. In the county that we didn't have. So I just want to say, I mean, part of this is just the inevitable challenge of not having enough money in the system. Because, I don't see that changing anytime soon, because as you know, we've been wrestling with the state for the money we thought we needed for the homeless side, for the emergency shelters. We've been fighting on a lot of different fronts for what we think we actually need. And I just think the $1.1 billion hole that the state's in, and then the funding challenges from the federal government to the state, it's only going to get more challenging. So I just want to reiterate that.
Thank you. Another piece of the formula model so this was divided into 3 areas, funding diversification. Another third was 24-hour access. And this is based on community input in regards to what the community needs. Being able to have access to shelter 24 hours is something that a lot of the community has said is necessary. And so we recognize that. And so you get 0.33 if you're open 24 hours. Another one is connection to service providers. And so our community mental health provider who provides mental health and substance use disorders, the engagement that they have with the different providers, being able to get those folks connected to services. Another piece that was not part of the formula model, but was then deducted if there was an amount that went unspent. And that only happened on the SB 5511 fund. If that amount was deducted from the amount that provider would have received and provided to the other provider. So based on that information, we then took that other 50%. So in the case of the 5019 funds, the other 636,000, we had that multiply factor, and then we multiplied it times the number of beds. And so as you can see in the spreadsheet, for CCA, they would be getting $817,416.71 or $14,093.39 per bed. And Lifeboat would be getting $454,697.27 or $20,668.06 per bed. We recognize that this is different than what the state had provided, because the state just provided each of them $625,000 last year. And so when you're looking at that from a per bed perspective, CCA was receiving $10,775 and Lifeboat Services was receiving $28,409. So we recognize that there is a big difference. but we're also recognizing the services being provided. And the per bed allocation is what we feel is a fair allocation for each of those. So for Helping Hands in the harbor, same thing, their pot of money obviously was smaller. And so you take that 426,559, they're each getting 106,639 for those base amounts. And then the other 213,000, that other 50% is then allocated based on their per bed formula. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have. One thing that I do want to point out that this is only the emergency shelter funding. And it's only for this year. The county will apply to be a regional coordinator. It's a pretty arduous process. And we are already beginning, those efforts. We are still waiting to hear back on, there's two different pots that come for housing. One of those is the ORI, Oregon Rehousing Initiative, and the other one is the LTRA, which is the long-term rental assistance. And so we haven't gotten contracts on those. Those are the ones that there was a lot of conversations about because CCA, was funded through they're the ones that are providing the housing services for everybody in the county. And they rehoused over 228 households, I believe it was. And those funds, though, they're expiring at the end of June 2025. They were able to extend them out, but those rents are continuing, and we anticipated that we would have contracts in place as of July. And so CCA will be floating another month here coming up, but at this point in time, we still need a contract. So there's still a lot of concern there. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. These agenda items, they're part of the amended agenda is it's on the consent calendar for the 4 service providers. We have signed contracts from all but one service provider. And so what you would be approving is if that service provider chooses to sign the contract, then we would move forward with that.
I had one real question, quick question, just a very basic one. We've divided between created beds and maintained beds. And are there, I guess, crossover between the two? That's what I was trying to figure out. How do we make that distinction between those?
So the created beds were the ones that were originally funded under House Bill 5019, and it specifically was a separate contract, and it was you say based on your local plan that you can create these 80 beds, 58 beds at 58 beds at Columbia Inn, 22 beds at Lifeboat Services. And so we received that original pot of money from OHCS. The maintain existing beds was Helping Hands in the harbor already existed in our community. And so the state recognized that, there's challenges for even those shelter operators. And so they then provided funding specific through 5511 for those beds. And so that's where we said, okay, well, we're going to continue to recognize that there's a created bed and there's a maintained bed.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay, Chair. Can I ask a question, just when you talk about the per bed allocation or the cost per bed, when you look at it with services rendered, you're talking about why are we having such a vast difference per bed between Lifeboat and then Helping Hands, for example? When one's 4,500 per bed and the other's 20,000.
Well, part of that is the pot of money. So when you're comparing Helping Hands and Lifeboat, Helping Hands is part of that 25% pot of money, and Lifeboat is part of the 75%. So the amount that they're getting to begin with is less. But the other piece of it is just trying to be equitable and looking at that funding formula. If we were to just go off of a per bed allocation, CCA would have received $922,282, and Lifeboat would have received $349,831. If we were to just look at it on a per bed basis.
Just a proportional percentage, right?
So we were trying to recognize that Lifeboat has, you know, as we said, those costs to provide service that everybody has, utilities, mortgage, rents, all that sort of stuff. And then, so that's why we decided, okay, we're gonna break it out that way to begin with, and then from there, we'll use a per bed allocation based on this funding formula.
Yeah, gotcha. So do we know what their actual cost per bed is then? Because this is this allocation, it's not their actual cost per bed.
Yeah, I mean, they have their additional costs, but, you know, each of them could provide more information as to the actual cost per bed, because they also have other funding that they get. And so if you have other funding, which, you know, that's again, you received more points, if you want to call it that, if you had more diverse funding. And so if you have additional funding to help pay for those beds, then your per bed cost is probably, you know, greater than what we're even giving them credit for.
I mean, I appreciate the push for diversification of funding, because the forecast for the state to continue to fund programs such as this is becoming more and more bleak as we move forward in the landscape. So do we have any actual numbers regarding if we've moved the needle at all over the last year and a half? Because I know that the numbers that I looked at was like 2023, when we found out that we were basically the highest rate of unhoused in the state. And so do we have more recent numbers?
So we do a point in time count every January, and so that will be coming again. And this last January, I want to say that we were about the same, if not just slightly higher. And so at this point in time, you know, we feel like we moved the needle in the sense that you had 200 and some families, households that were unhoused, because that funding was not funding that could be used to prevent eviction. It had to be, you had to go through, unfortunately, the unhoused process. So it was somebody coming from a shelter. And so, excuse me, I know that our shelter beds are pretty much full every night. And so, you know, I think that there's a lot of different reasons why we continue to see unsheltered folks for a myriad of conditions, but
I think that percentage is only relevant if you look at the denominator being like, okay, these are people that have lost homes here. But if they're people that are migrating here and adding to the volume, then of course, we're not going to move that needle at all. And so that doesn't change the numerator when you're just talking about the increase in the denominator that way. I'd be curious, like, how many people were in that unhoused system already compared to how many people are new to the community, and adding to that number as a whole to influx and create a bigger problem. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all valid questions, and we have done a lot over the last few years to create beds, to provide services, yet we see a lot more people. And I think, you know, that begs the question at some point, you know, when folks are refusing services, then what is the next course of action? Because we have done our part, in my and I think we continue to work with our partners to try to find a solution. But at some point, you know, we have to make some tough decisions, and I think that we have to work with the city of Astoria and others, say, listen, we just can't. People aren't going to take, you know, advantage of what we're trying to provide for assistance. Then there has to be some other alternative here. It's not going to please everybody, but it has to be part of this difficult discussion.
Yeah, Chair, members of the board, I think that, you know, what we've done with your leadership is to create, you know, the fundamental safety net that didn't exist prior to having these beds available. And we're really fortunate. We've had some really strong, you know, nonprofit partners that are working with us to address this. But you know, the state is not gonna have the resources to continue to fund at this level. And the counties have no ability to backfill. I mean, there's no county that has an ability to backfill. I mean, there's some counties that have, you know, levies to support homelessness and housing, metro area, areas, but rural areas don't have that. And there's no path to actually have that. And so, you know, I think that we're fortunate to have funding for a year. We hope that we have funding beyond that. But for all of our partners, we're gonna have to figure out what that next iteration of funding really looks like and how it's cobbled together, because there's gonna be less. And that's what I've, you know, I think that's one of the tragic parts of this whole thing, is that we've made such huge strides, but there's less capacity in the public system to fund these critical services than there has been in quite a while. And there's a lot of reasons to it. We've talked about it a lot, but so I think, like all things, everybody's gonna have to look at how do we do this a little bit differently. It's just like the county has had to look and say, how do we become more efficient, more effective? How do we prioritize what we're doing and how we're doing it? And I'm not saying that these organizations don't do that every day, just like we do, because I'm sure that they probably do, but that's just gonna be the reality for all of us. I mean, and that's schools, that's cities, it's everything, so.
So what would, if we get deemed a regional coordinator, what would that bring to the table for the county, the communities?
I mean, essentially, we're acting as the regional coordinator
So
right now.
no
The state is building the plane as we fly it. And so that's why they're only doing the 1 year funding, because the biennium, they're planning for the second year of the biennium to put this regional coordinator position in place. It's an application process. They're still developing the rules for the process.
Basically.
Well, it would be similar to like what we're doing right now, is the admin piece that we're getting right now. You would.
Assuming that
You know,
there's
just pay
funding
for the
continues.
staff
Yeah.
member to do the work
Yeah.
that we were doing, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, we've got a couple minutes we can transition up to the. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody.
have mine.
All right. The Board of Commissioners, as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everybody here this evening. Clerk of the Board, can we have the roll call, please?
Chair Quila,
Here.
Vice Chair Banks,
Here.
Commissioner Wakua,
Here.
Commissioner Webb,
Commissioner Webb is excused,
Commissioner Thompson,
and Commissioner Thompson is excused. All right, we had an opportunity to review the amended agenda, both for the work session and the regular session. Do we have any questions? Are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve.
I second.
Moved and seconded to approve the amended agenda. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. First item is a proclamation for Veterans Day. And is Sam here? Sam Jeeves? It's Jeans, right? Yes, sir. Yeah, come on up. Veteran Services Officer Assistant at Clatsop Community Action. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
And I'll turn it over to you.
All right, well, as you said so yourself, my name is Sam Jeans. I work with Clatsop Community Action with the Veteran Service Office for the county. And here is the informational summary for the Veterans Day proclamation. This proclamation recognizes Veterans Day and Clatsop County's participation in Operation Greenlight for Veterans, a nationwide initiative to honor and support veterans and their families. Veterans Day, observed annually on November 11th, is an opportunity for communities across the country to recognize veterans and their families as a part of the fabric of the local community and provides an opportunity for Clatsop County residents to honor their neighbors who served and wore the uniform. This year marks the 106th official observance of Veterans Day in the United States. As part of this recognition, Clatsop County is once again participating in Operation Greenlight for Veterans. In partnership with Clatsop Community Action, the cities of Astoria, Cannon Beach, Gearhart, Seaside, and Warrenton, and other community partners. From November 4th through November 11th, participants will illuminate their buildings in green to show appreciation for local veterans and to raise awareness about the challenges many face and the resources available to support them. All residents, businesses, and local agencies are encouraged to join by changing one or more light bulbs inside or outside their home or place of business to a green bulb. This simple gesture helps spark conversations and sends a clear message that our veterans are seen, appreciated, and supported. Free green light bulbs are available for community members at the following locations while supplies last. Our office at Clatsop Community College, we're in the services building, 1717 room 100, or county manager's office, 4th floor reception, or if you are so inclined, we please encourage you, we have some over there on the table with some flyers, so help yourself. If you'd like more information about Operation Greenlight and the county's Veteran Services Program, please find out more on the county website. And yeah, a little 2 cents, Veterans Day, a lot of veterans, just from what I've spoken about and from myself and the ones I know, sometimes veterans kind of brush it off a little bit. It's just a day off. Sometimes they have to work on Veterans Day, which I always thought was funny. So it is, you know, they might brush it off. I've been one to brush off Veterans Day myself, but I've been found to be wrong, that it is something that we should pay attention to. And, you know, I'm not, please do not pat me on the back or thank me for my service. It's rather uncomfortable for me personally, but it is good to spread that awareness and make sure that they are appreciated. So thank you all for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. Appreciate the message, and certainly thank you for presenting this ordinance this evening. I want to thank Jennifer Benoit, too, from the Communications Department. She put out a press release encouraging folks to participate in Operation Greenlight. So thanks again. I appreciate that we're all getting on board and spreading the word.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any discussion?
No.
We ready for a motion?
I move to approve the resolution and order proclaiming November 11th, 2025 as Veterans Day and authorize the chair to read and then sign the proclamation.
I second.
Moved and seconded to approve the resolution in order proclaiming November 11th, 2025 as Veterans Day and authorize the chair to read then sign the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. In the matter of proclaiming November 11th, 2025 to be Veterans Day, whereas in November 1919, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first commemoration of Armistice Day, the precursor to Veterans Day. And whereas veterans make up 10.6% of Clatsop County's adult population, a rate that is about 1.5 times higher than the Oregon average of 7.5% and more than 1.5 times higher than the national average of 6.4%. And whereas Clatsop County is also home to numerous active duty personnel and countless veteran and military family members, representing all branches of the armed forces, United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Space Force. And whereas veterans and their families shall be recognized for their contributions to our community and the sacrifices that were made through their service to our nation and others around the world. And whereas President George Washington said, "The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their nation." And whereas Clatsop County, in partnership with Clatsop Community Action, is committed to serving these valuable members of our community through the county's Veteran Services Program. And whereas Clatsop County and numerous community partners will join others across the nation in the initiative Operation Greenlight for Veterans, letting our local veteran community know that they are seen, appreciated, and supported by illuminating our buildings green from November 4th to the 11th, 2025. Now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim November 11th, 2025 as Veterans Day. And Clatsop County encourages all community members to join in this observance and celebration of the sacrifices made by all who wore the uniform of the armed forces, and share our gratitude for the local veteran community by displaying a green light outside their residence or place of business from November 4th through November 11th, 2025. Dated this day, this 22nd day of October, 2025, Clatsop County Board of Commissioners. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you for all you do for our veterans. Next is business. Anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda, except for public hearings, or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. For the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, they're not.
All right. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person this evening?
No, they're not.
All right. Anyone here that would like to participate in public comment? All right. Seeing any, we'll go ahead and close business from the public and move on to the consent calendar. Any discussion on the consent calendar? And again, we have a few items that were added, 7A, 7B, 7C, and 7D. Okay,
No further discussion.
ready for a motion?
I move to approve the amended consent calendar.
A second?
All right, moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move on to commissioner reports and Commissioner Wakua.
I have no updates.
Commissioner Banks?
I gave my updates during our work session, just a continuation of conversations, for the upcoming CFTLC meeting.
This is going to be a fast one.
Short
I do not have any updates as well, County Manager.
Sir, members of the board, I don't have any updates
Oh, my.
Wow.
This seems
This
planned.
could be a
There's a
record.
plot afoot.
All right, we'll move on to the business agenda. Appointment to the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties, page 57. County Manager.
Chuck Wheeler, members of the board, as you're aware, CFTLC is a committee of the AOC.
It is a committee where Clatsop County is one of 2 counties who has a designated position. 3 other positions are shared by multiple counties. We are designated with that one position because of the amount of state forests that are in the county. Commissioner Bangs has been serving as our CFTLC representative. Historically, this position has been appointed during the AOC conference, but there was a few challenges with that appointment process related to our charter. And that's that any appointment needs to be made by the majority of the board during a regular meeting. And so last year we had a conversation with AOC about our board making the appointment prior to the AOC conference, so they know who the Clatsop County representative is before the actual meeting. And so this agenda item just asks your board to appoint the CFTLC representative for the 2026 calendar year. And that's all I have.
Yeah, I'm glad we made that change and glad that we've done this in an orderly way to be able to be prepared for the AOC conference and have our appointee in place. We have any discussion? All right, are we ready for a motion?
I motion to appoint Commissioner Banks to a 1-year term on the Council for Forest Trust Land Counties.
I would second that.
Like, do I second?
No, you don't need to. Okay, moved and seconded to appoint Commissioner Courtney Bangs to a 1-year term on the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties. And I would just make one, as far as discussion, I make one comment that, you know, we've been very well served by Commissioner Bangs in this role. And as we just discussed in our budget discussion this evening, it's more important than ever that we have a pulse on what's going on with the Habitat Conservation Plan, with some of the other, you know, challenges that the industry is facing, and then also what that impact will mean for our county and the revenue that our county will see over the years to come. I just really appreciate what you have been able to bring back to us and how you've kept us very informed on what to expect. And these negotiations are ongoing. It's still at the federal level, the Habitat Conservation Plan. We don't know what, you know, will ultimately be what we have to deal with, but we certainly know that we have the right person in place to let us, you know, kind of further ahead on
Crystal ball.
Crystal ball. Whatever, I mean, I just really have appreciated, in short, appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wakua.
Before my motion, I should have prefaced by asking you if you wanted to be nominated, but, you know, in all fairness, I don't think there could be a better advocate, so that's why.
Yeah.
I wish
agree.
it came with hazard pay, but it doesn't.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to appoint Commissioner Courtney Bangs to a 1-year term on the Council of Forest Trust Land Counties. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Congratulations. All right, that being our business agenda item, we are to the good of the order. Does anybody have anything to go over?
I should have mentioned that I toured Hampton Mill and discussed with them, some of the landscape just regarding, policies and permitting and the climate of operating a business in the state of Oregon.
Yeah.
And it's not getting easier.
Right.
So I just wanted to put that out there. Let's as a community try to support our industries as much as possible, because that's where the money comes from.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, for everybody's benefit, we did have a lot of content on our work session this evening.
Yes, we did.
So
It was great.
I don't feel too guilty about breaking out here at 6:15. But if we don't have anything else, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank